Oh, what do we got here? Ha, a little bass. So there you have it. I got me a little bass, which is pretty cool. So if you're brand new to fishing, just wanting to learn fishing or take a kid fishing, this is the video for you. I'm going to take a few minutes here and explain to you kind of the step-by-step process of what it takes to get started fishing, to go out, fish, and actually catch some fish. First and foremost, most important thing is knowing your regulations. Every state is different, every county, every city, or even private, each one has its own set of regulations. The best way to find out the regulations is to go to takemefishing.org or bassproshops.com and search your state, and they'll tell you what you need to have. So now that you have what you need to be legal in your state or your area, now it's time to do some homework and find out where to go fishing. If you're new to fishing, find a small body of water. That way I can look at a body of water and go, I know where the fish are. Now I just have to catch them. The bigger the body of the water, then you have to spend more time searching for them. So today we're actually at my little pond here. And the thing I love about this pond, sometimes it can be challenging, but the thing about my pond is it's tiny. It's maybe 3/4 of an acre. So the fish that are there, I can see everywhere that they're at. So now all I have to do is just figure out how to catch them. And here's something to remember. The bigger the body of water, and this even pertains to my little tiny pond, is 90% of the fish live in 10% of the water. The bigger the body of the water, then you have to spend more time searching for them. So if fish live in 10% of the body of water, here's where you need to start. So even in my little pond, I want to look for something, some type of structure. Fish are no different than we are. I mean, if we're in the middle of a big open field and it's bright and sunny out and there's one lone tree there, I'm going to go to that tree because it creates some shade or a shelter or a structure or something. So the fish are going to go to something that they can relate to. And, it may be a lay down tree. It may be some vegetation. It may be some man-made habitat. It might, whatever it is, it's something in there that gives the fish something to relate to. And then from there, they can use that to either live or to feed as well. So you want to find something that stands out. I always tell people this, no matter where you go, some type of a point is probably one of the best things that you can find to fish. If there's like a little lake or a pond and it creates a little point, a point is a great place to start. Docks are a great place to fish. There's always fish that are relating to docks, and they're usually pretty easy to fish. But edges are the other thing that are so important as well. So like my pond has a lot of vegetation around the edges. So if I can find little edges of my vegetation, there's typically fish sit around those edges, and it's a great place to catch fish. So here it is. I've got this nice tackle bag, but it's bare minimum in here is what I've got. So I've got a little towel in here for my hands. I've got a little thing of split shot sinkers, probably not going to need those. I've got a little bobber or strike indicator. That's always fun, especially for kids or people that are new to fishing. Got a little pair of needle nose pliers or side cutters here just for cutting line and getting hooks out. Got a couple packages of hooks here, and I've got these little things called crappie nibbles. These things are great for catching fish. I mean, just for a beginner, these things are great. I've got some night crawlers here. Those are also a good choice. But like I said, there's a lot of things even in your kitchen that are great for catching fish. But keeping it simple. So I've got a couple different hooks here. And the big key is that I can tell you when it comes to hooks, and this is something to remember, especially you parents, if you're teaching kids, a little hook will catch little fish and big fish, but a big hook will only catch big fish. And what I mean by that is by the bend of the hook, the smaller the bend of the hook, the smaller mouths it can fit into to catch smaller fish. The bigger the bend of the hook is, you might have a small bluegill that can't get the hook in the fish's mouth. So therefore you're not gonna be able to hook those fish. So if you're new to fishing, a smaller hook is better than a bigger hook. So what we're gonna pick though, this is one of my favorites, especially for these little nibble bites, is this is an Aberdeen light wire panfish hook. It's a number 8. Believe it or not, this little tiny hook right here, we've caught 50-pound carp on. Let's get one of these tied on the rod. show you how to rig one of these and show you how to catch some fish. So let's look at my setup here. What I've got here is I've got this is a 6'10" medium light spinning rod with a little 2000 size reel. A very popular reel for a lot of beginners is a spin cast or push button reel. Those are great as well, but a light spinning setup is good as well. So just something, you know, it doesn't need to be heavy. This has got, I think, 8-pound braid on here with a little fluorocarbon leader. That's not necessary. You can use straight fluorocarbon, you can use straight mono, but this is just a preference I prefer. But just a lightweight setup. And then I've taken one of those number 8 hooks, I've tied it onto my fluorocarbon leader here. And that's all I've got. That's all I've got on my setup right here is just this hook. Like I said, we're keeping it simple. So with this little setup, you know, it's gonna be a little bit of a challenge to cast, but that's what I want to do. I want to keep it simple and make it look natural. So what we're going to do here is we're going to take one of our little nibbles here, and this goes back to the bend of the hook. I like the yellow just because you can see it in the water good, because a lot of times you'll see these fish bite. So with this setup here, we're not trying to catch big fish. We're just trying to catch fish. And usually to catch numbers of fish, it's usually panfish, it's bluegill, crappie, sunfish, green sunfish, you know, a lot of your panfish species. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this hook. You see the bend of it? That's what I like about these baits is you thread one of them on there just like so, and it sits right on that bend. That way, you know, whether it's a bigger fish that comes up and bites it or even a small one, when they come up and suck this thing in, they're going to get the bend of that hook in their mouth, and that little point's going to get them, and we're going to have us a fish. So we're just going to take this thing down to the pond. So just going to take this thing, throw it out there, make it look real natural, and just let it hit the water and see. And usually when it makes that ripple on the surface, it will get fish's attention, and hopefully they'll swim over to investigate and eat it. And had a little bite. It just felt a little heavy, and oh, what do we got here? Ha, a little bass. So there you have it. I got me a little bass, which is pretty cool. But you can see that little gold Aberdeen hook hooked that bass perfectly. So, you know, it's not a big bass, but still, it's really exciting. And if you're new to catching fish, just having something bite the end of your line and get it in is definitely a success. So nice little bass. He was hooked right in the top of the mouth like you want. So there you have it. So our first fish of the day on the little nibble is a small little largemouth bass. Typically in a public lake, you'd want to release this immediately, but for the sake, if you've got kids or something for you, always have a 5-gallon bucket because it's always fun. Get you a bucket with some water in it, and that way the fish can breathe, but also just gives the time for you as a successful angler to examine the fish, for the kids to see the fish, kind of play with it a little bit, get their hands slimy, because that's what kids like to do, and it's what newbies like to do, is kind of admire their catch. So, you know, obviously this fish, we're not going to keep it, we're going to let it go. But if it was one of those things where if you were keeping fish for a meal, let's say some bigger bluegill or crappie, a 5-gallon bucket's great for that, or a stringer or something along those lines. But there's our catch. Now we're going to let him go. Okay, so we came over here in the shade, and I thought this would be a great place, one, because it's shaded, that the bluegill would be over here in the shade. But with that being said, we haven't caught any bluegill. We did catch a little bass. We're going to go over to the dock and give it a try. So we moved over here to our dock. Docks are a great place to fish, especially you know, if you've got maybe kids or something where you're worried about them getting snagged in the vegetation or a tree or something like that, because usually it's open around them. Obviously, just be careful not to fall off the dock or go swimming or something like that. But the thing I like about a dock also, especially a fishing dock, a lot of times they'll put fish habitat around a dock to attract fish, but just the dock itself will create shade and a safe space for your feeder fish, your bluegill, your panfish, all that. But then a lot of times your bigger fish, your bass, will live under those places as well. Take our nibbles again. These things are great. I love these things because the fact that I don't have to keep them alive. They don't spoil. They don't dry up. You can keep them in a container like this. Keep them in your tackle bag, and they seem to last forever. And they're, you know, they're a synthetic bait, but they're a bait that's really, really effective for catching a variety of species. So, like I said, all I'm doing with this thing is I'm taking it and making it look just as if it's something I dropped in the water naturally. I mean, just as if I were to take this thing, these things, and just throw them out there, you know, as if I was just throwing something in the water. That's what I want my bait to look like, is something naturally put in the water. So I'm going to take my bait. You know, you don't have to throw out in the middle of the lake too. A lot of times, a lot of your fish are right under the shade of the dock. So I'm just dropping this thing down. I'm just kind of watching my line. I can let it sink to the bottom. I'm just watching my line. But what I want is that natural fall of the bait. I'm dropping this thing right down to close to the corners of the dock, the edges, places where the fish, like I said, the fish feel protected. You know, they like to be in the shade, especially when it's bright and sunny like this, or if there's some brush. So there we go. Got me a little bluegill. And here's the thing to remember about fish, is fish have these little fins. And if I go along and grab this fish like this, it can fin me. But if I go from the head down, like so, it pushes those fins down, and that way they're not going to fin me. So when you hold your fish, just a good firm grip. You can kind of feel, you know, if you're squeezing them too hard or not, you know, enough, they'll wiggle around. So there it is. Hook's out. I'm going to let the fish go now, because we're not keeping these fish. This is just catch and release, having some fun fishing. And just kind of drop it around in different places, because you want it to look as natural as possible. So if that's just something that fell in the water, it looks natural to the fish. And, you know, I mean, you can let it lay on the bottom, but a lot of times, you know, that's not the best maneuver. Usually it seems like just keeping the bait moving, falling through the water column is probably the best way to catch them. And there we have it. Another little bluegill. Bluegill are great for beginners, because they typically school up in an area. So if there's one, there's usually a lot. So there we go. Got the hook out. Just got a hold of him. We're just going to let him go and catch another one. So there you have it. You know, just dropping a bait down, making it look natural, will definitely catch the fish. So if you're just getting into fishing, remember, keep it simple. Get you just a nice medium action spinning or spin cast push button type rod and reel, some 6 to 10 pound line, number 6 or number 8 Aberdeen hooks, and just some worms, some nibbles, some hot dogs, some corn, something like that. Get out there and wet a line and start your fishing adventures.